Alright, limit over collection. This time for the rivals. Since we done a Protag version, we of course must have the rival version. Although this time's case, it's a little more awkward because not every rival actually got a remake here. Especially with the weird stuff they decided to do. So let's begin. So we start off with Blue Eyes White Dragon, the Phantom Beast, which is of course just like the original, level 8 light dragon with 3000 attack, 2500 defense. The Phantom Beast being a title that it's given. But anyway, its first two effects are both hard once per turn. The first one being, when this card is added from your deck to your hand, or a monster was destroyed by battle, you can reveal this card from your hand to special summon. Adding this to your hand is not entirely too hard, especially for a Blue Eyes deck. And it's also pretty nice that you can bring in 3k beater just in case one of your monsters gets destroyed. With the second effect linked to the first effect practically, where if this card special summon from your hand or deck, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls, but you can only attack directly with Blue Eyes monsters for the rest of the turn. Damn, on search you can special summon this and then nuke your opponent's board, which could actually be quite nasty, especially if you have a full board of Blue Eyes to direct attack your opponent with. With the third effect, where when a card or effect activates that targets this card on the field, quick effect, you can discard one card to negate that effect. So this can be pretty nice just for some protection, although it's not completely necessary because it's just a base form and discarding a card can hurt up a bit, but at the same time it does set up your graveyard so it doesn't entirely hurt. But of course, being a remake, it is of course better than the original, although it doesn't count itself as the original, so I do see people still running the original because of it. But for a remake of Blue Eyes, it's definitely better since it does have effects, especially since it's a kinda easy searchable special summon that can nuke your opponent's board with a little protection. And now we go to the GX rival that isn't Manjome or Chaz, with one of the alternate main rivals being Cyber Dragon, the Decisive Strike Dragon, which is a level 10 light machine with 4000 attack, 2800 defense, also fusion. Requires 3 machine monsters with 2100 attack or more, which by default is easier to summon than the original Cyber Dragon since that one needs exactly 3 Cyber Dragons, while this one could be any monsters that are machines that are 2100 attack or more. But anyway, it must be fusion summoned, and the first effect is a hard once per turn. So if this card is fusion summoned using only light monsters, you can pay 4000 life to add 1 limiter removal from your deck to your hand. Basically, the 4000 life part is basically a huge risk for its power. In a way, kind of a reference to Power Bond, but this time using limiter removal to break its limit. With the second effect, just like the original, it does piercing damage, and the third effect making me wish that the original had this effect. If this card's attack is higher than its original attack, it can make a second and third attack during each battle phase. For having 3 heads, it means that it can have 3 attacks. Kinda wish that the original one has this, just like how Cyber Twin Dragon can attack twice because it has 2 heads. Although this one is more restricted because it needs to have higher attack than its original, although thanks to its first effect, the third effect is easily possible on summon turn, especially if you use limiter removal, this is going to blow itself up, or even if you just power bond this, you're going to have 3 attacks per turn, and inflicts piercing, so potentially an OTK machine. So yeah, by default it's better than the original since it does more than the original and it's easier to summon. And then to a strange choice of a card that does relate to the Signer Dragon, the Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl, which I can kinda forgive that they decided to make this over Red Dragon Archfiend since this was a Crimson Dominion stream with basically a Red Dragon Archfiend themed set and support, but I do find it weird since this is called the Rivals set, we have the Crimson Dragon. And I do kinda like its artwork because it includes the Signer Dragons that is not Blackwing Dragon, which is sorta weird to me at the same time because it was retconned to be a Signer Dragon, but at least they put Livestream Dragon in. But anyway, just like the original Crimson Dragons, a level 12 Dark Dragon Synchro with 0 attack and defense, 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuners, and the first and third effect are both hard once per turn. The first one being, if this card Synchro Summon, you can special summon as many Dragon Synchro monsters from the graveyard as possible, but you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn, since you are doing a mass summon. I do kinda get. And then the second effect has this card gain attack equal to the total attack of all your Synchro monsters you control except itself. Essentially, this is a more battle variation of Crimson Dragon, since based on its artwork, all the Signer Dragons are fighting together, thus powering up the Crimson Dragon, and also Crimson Dragon destroying your opponent. So if anything, these two effects kind of relate to the lore. And I do feel like this should have been the actual Crimson Dragon's effect because it does feel kind of wrong that it's mostly just awakening your dragons more than basically playing offensive. But anyway, the third effect is that when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can return 1 other Dragon Synchro monster you control to the extra deck. If you do, negate that activation. Overall, it's a nice offensive version of Crimson Dragon basically. Not basically like the original Crimson Dragon that we got printed, where it basically awakens their monsters, but instead we got a more battle-orientated Crimson Dragon, which I am quite happy for, especially when it comes to Signer Dragon lore. And then we go to Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, Photon Howling, which is the effect name on summon. which is a rank 8 light dragon exceed with 4,500 attack, 3,000 defense, requires 3 level 8 monsters like the original, although it has an alternate way to summon because once per turn you can also exceed summon this card by using one rank 8 exceed monster you control. Of course, transfer its materials to this card. Basically already armor exceed summon for most Galaxy Eyes, as most Galaxy Eyes actually have this type of effect. But anyway, to its effects, the first one being if this card's exceed summon, you can take one photon monster from your deck and either special summon in defense or attach it to this card as material, which keep in mind could even be the Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, because Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon is the main card, but more so to make sure that you actually have enough materials for the second effect, because the second effect is that you can detach 3 materials from this card to tribute one other exceed monster, and if you do, negate the effects of all other face-up cards currently on the field until the end turn. In a way, it's a harder to use Photon Howling effect, although not as conditional. But this card is also easier to summon, so I can't exactly complain about it, especially since on Exceed Summon you can also summon another monster, which could actually set up for more plays as well. And most of your Galaxy Eyes already requires 2 materials, and then if you armor exceed it, it'll give you your 3rd material anyway. And it's still a 45k beater, so I can't exactly complain since it is easier to summon. So overall, I do like it. And now to the really weird monster choice, we got Star Venom Fusion Dragon of the 4 Heavenly Dragons. Not DDD Armageddon, we're getting another Star Venom, despite having a new Star Venom in the Crimson Dominion set. This set is called the Rivals, and yet this is the one that is not the main rival. Really weird. But anyway, it's a level 8 Dark Dragon Fusion with 2800 attack, 2000 defense, requires 2 dark monsters on the field just like the original, but unlike the original, it's also treated as a Predator Plant card, with its 2 effects being hard once per turn. The first one being, if this card is special summon, you can target one other face-up monster on the field, change its attack to 0, and negate its effect, and also its attribute becomes dark. With the second effect, where when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can fusion summon one dark fusion monster from your extra deck using dark monsters on the field, including this card. And yes, you can use your opponent's monsters as well, so that's also pretty nice. Also nice that it's a Star Venom that counts as a Predator Plant card, as it could put more flexibility to the archetype. Although not as strong as the original, it does have its uses, especially since it can negate on summon. And also, since they made this card, it does make me wonder if they're gonna make the other 2 Dimension Dragons into 4 Heavenly Dragon titles. And then finally to our last card, Barrel Load Liberator Dragon. Just like the original, Link 4 Dark Dragon with 3000 attack, left, right, bottom, right, requires at least 3 effect monsters, and you can only summon this once per turn. More so relates to the last effect, but the first effect is that once per turn during the battle phase quick effect, you can place one monster your opponent controls to this card's zone where it points to and take control of it, and your opponent cannot respond to this effect. Only problem with this type of effect is that while it's nice that you can take control of your opponent's monster, especially before attacking, this card doesn't have any arrows pointing up. So it does make it a little awkward, but it is nice that you can take control of your opponent's stuff and your opponent can't respond to it. But anyway, the second effect is why the summon restriction is there, because once per chain, if this card's in the graveyard, quick effect, you can target one monster you control, destroy it. If you do, special summon this card. That could even be the monster that you take in control of. And for rockets or bullets, this doesn't matter because you're going to be activating those effects at the end phase as well. And essentially, it's a 3k beater that you can continually resurrect, even if it's a hard once per turn. Overall, cool new barrel load, although not entirely necessary since the original barrel load was already pretty strong, and there's already 3 variations if you count the Link 4s only. And so that's it for these reviews of the Rivals Ace Monster remakes. Kinda, because not all of them are actually main rivals here. What do you guys think of it? Overall, I do think they're awesome, especially since remake of the originals is always usually intended to be better than the original. And it's nice to see old monsters getting huge updates. Although I do find some of them being weird choices, mainly the Crimson Dragon and Star Venom, and we still need a new main deck DDD Armageddon. Since it's actually kind of weird that they decided not to remake Armageddon, but instead Star Venom, which is not even a main rival. Crimson Dragon at least relates to the Red Dragon Archfiend, and recently we just got Red Dragon Archfiend support in the same set in this stream. So at least Red Dragon Archfiend is understandable, so they went with Crimson Dragon instead, although I really think they should just remake the original Red Dragon Archfiend instead. And once again, Chaz getting shadow banned, despite technically being the main rival since he's the one that actually consistently showed up in the whole show. And once again, they really can't make up their mind who's going to be the main rival of GX, because they keep rotating it every single time. But still awesome stuff. Although I do still hope they make a new Armed Dragon, whether it's level 7 or 10, even though we do got the Thunder one already, along with a new Armageddon. That's the one I really want, since I think Reiji needs a really good retrain of Armageddon. But on that, that's it for this, and see y'all next time.